Hello there. Yes, I'm Akhaze, the National Development Strategist. You know, in the construction industry where I specialize in, if a project manager that is handling a couple of projects constantly goes 300% above budget in all those projects, he goes 300% over budget, project after project, he will be fired. He will be fired. But you see, in the government sector, when a project manager, you know, goes over budget 300% at every point in time, it is called what the status quo. But this cannot continue. This must stop. And how are we going to stop it? This is what I want to discuss in this video. And now, to move Nigeria from the third world to the first world, we must stop the bleeding of our nation's world resources into private pockets. We don't just have a revenue problem, we have a value assurance problem. Now, what's the solution to contract inflation? I call it the Value Assurance and Special Projects Agency. You know, an agency that we help our country curb what contract inflation. Let me tell you, contract inflation is one of the things that make is one of the major causes of the lack of infrastructure in our country. Because if there is no contract inflation, the government will have so much more money to do 10 times more infrastructure than they are doing. But because there's a lot of contract inflation, that's the reason why they have so little money to what to carry out infrastructure. That's the reason why so much money is committed to just execute a single piece of infrastructure. Why? Because what it has been what inflated. It has been inflated. So to achieve rapid development in Nigeria, we need a specialized body. I'm suggesting that we need a specialized body and agency, that is designed to achieve three things, three objectives. Three objectives. Number one, this agency will bypass what we call moribund bureaucracy. What is that? You know, if you go to the civil service today, the existing civil service structures today, they are often too slow. They are too compromised. Most civil servants you see, before they do any, or if they do anything, they have an ulterior motive behind for doing those things. They have an ulterior motive. So they are too compromised, they are too slow to handle high speed developmental projects. Nigeria needs an agile government agency that operates with what? Private sector efficiency. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you that are listening to me or watching me, you have been to a government agency or a government ministry or a government parastatal. You have also been to a private entity, a private organization. You can see the difference. You can see the difference in the way they do things. You can see the difference in their execution. You can see the difference in their transparency. You can see. You can see. We need that kind of private sector efficiency what in our government what infrastructure. We need it. We need it. So number one, that agency will bypass this moribund bureaucracy, that slow way of doing things that government is known for. Number two, that agency will primarily will kill contract inflation. Every contract, if that agency exists, every contract, every government contract should undergo what we call a value audit. Yes, before a single cover is released, before it is approved, it must go through a value audit. Let us determine this contract cost that this ministry or this parastatal says this project will cost. Is it realistic? Is it similar to what obtains in other countries for recent projects? Contract costs of proposed government projects, they must be benchmarked against what current global standards and trends. Nobody can just come and say, oh, this project costs 10 billion and just approve it. No, we need to find out. This project was just completed in South Africa. This project was just completed in Burundi or in Ghana or in Romania or in Germany. How much was the cost of that project? How much was the cost? Convert it to dollars. Convert this value that they are presenting now, convert it to dollars and see. Does it add up? If it doesn't add up, then it means that that contract has been inflated. Now I recall this is an example. I recall sometime in 2013, 2014, thereabouts, the second Abuja airport runway was proposed to be built, and the ministry officials came to the National Assembly presenting a budget of about 65 billion. As the cost of that proposed runway. In fact, they said that the initial cost was 73 billion, but when they reviewed it, they brought it down to 65 billion. I recall then it was a kind of like a saga. The members of the National Assembly had a hard time accepting that this one way, just a one way, could cost that much. They said that based on their research, on the cost of recently completed airport runways around the world, just like I said, they went to find out around the world runways that have been recently completed, for how much were they completed or were they constructed? They went to find out. And they find out that the only way, taking note of it, they said the only way the second Abuja airport runway could cost that humongous sum of money, 65 billion, was if it was paved with gold. I can never forget that profound statement. He said if it was paved with what? With gold. Can you imagine? As a result, what happened? The second Abuja airport runway it was thrown out. The contract was thrown out by the National Assembly because for being what? Over bloated. If there was value assurance, if there was an agency that was in charge of value assurance, an agency outside of the ministry, under the federal government, but outside of the ministry, charged with what? Checking out, determining value assurance. This project, has it been inflated or not? I tell you, that whole thing would have been resolved. That situation would have been prevented. Perhaps we would have had the second Abuja runway by now. You know? So this thing what is so important. This is a typical example of what I'm talking of what I call what the ability to kill contract what inflation. Now the third thing which this agency will do is what it will track every cent, every kobo, every naira that is spent. It will track it. For international organizations funding projects in Nigeria, and then for the Nigerian government, the biggest fear, which we all know, is the black hole of fund misappropriation. When the government releases funds to the ministry to to construct a project or to carry out a project, there is always fear. There is always the issue of fund misappropriation, collecting kickbacks, inflating contracts, and all those things. When international organizations send money to Nigeria to carry out some projects, there is always the fear of what fund misappropriation. We need a system that monitors and tracks funds in real time to ensure that what they deliver their value at the right price. That is where this value assurance what comes in. See, project monitoring is not just a good idea, it's a survival strategy. That's the only way that our country can survive. That's the only way that our country can do much more infrastructure. That's the only way that the country can move forward. When we award projects and we fail to monitor them, we aren't just losing money. The government isn't just losing money. We are losing the trust of investors and the future of our citizens. Because when a international organization sends money to Nigeria, oh, we want to contribute this money to you to build this project that will affect the lives of Nigerians. And then 3 months, 6 months, 1 year down the line, they say the money is not enough, or the project is not completed, and the money has found its level. You have already lost trust. That investor, that international organization, they will find it hard in sending money in future to the country because of that. So, as a national development strategist, I believe that governance, is project management on a massive scale. Yes, it's project management, which we will do on a massive scale. If you can't account for the value of a road, a bridge, or a school, we have no business awarding the contract. If you cannot account for every kobo that you spend in on a project, then there's no business of awarding the contract in the first place. So, see, we cannot build a first world nation. Like I said, this channel is dedicated to building, I mean, to making Nigeria transition from what the third world status was to first world status. But you see, we cannot build a first world nation with a third world approach to spending. But I want to hear from you. In your community, local government or state, what is one project you have seen? Maybe you have seen a project that feels over bloated. They say this is how much this project costs, and you say, are you sure? It's I don't think so. What is that one project that you've seen that feels over bloated, or maybe overinflated, and last a clear return on investment? It's not just about being over bloated now, but that project is as if it's just an ego project, like I said in some other on some other of my videos. It's just, I mean, that project does not seem to have any direct value. you know I want you to start the conversation in the comments below. I want you to mention that project, or mention the project you saw and feel that this project is is too costly. This project, it lacks a clear return on investment. Please put it in the comments. If we don't demand value assurance from our leaders, nobody will give it to us. So that's the truth. So please don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell as we continue this journey to strategize what a better what Nigeria. I'm Akaze, your national development strategist, and I'll see you in the next one. Till then, stay blessed.